welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. Today we're talking about underrated players as Quan Martin and Zach Ertz were listed as underrated players. We're going to be talking about their impact last season, along with what we should expect from them this upcoming season. And so I'm going to remind you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button, just like Jayden Daniels is going to be hitting Terry McLaurin, Zach Ertz, and Deebo Samuel for lots of touchdowns this upcoming season. And so in exchange for hitting that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Washington Commanders. And so make sure you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Washington Commanders Insider family as we talk nothing but Washington Commanders football. And so with that being said, we are talking about underrated Washington Commanders, and we have two that made a couple of articles here. And so we're going to go ahead and start to talk about Zach Ertz first here. And so he was mentioned in a ESPN article here that you can find under this. And so picking the most underrated NFL players at every position. This was written by Aaron Schatz there. So hopefully I said that correctly, but you can go find this on ESPN. And so he talks about Zach Ertz, and this is what he had to say about him. And so talking about look, at first it seemed like that his career might be over, but obviously came in, had a good season, 66 passes for 654 yards and 7 touchdowns here, and talking about how him and Jayden Daniels really got into a great groove here. But statistically, I just really loved seeing this. And so first pointing out that, look, he had an 85.7 run block win rate there. One of the best figures among starting tight ends. And so that's huge. I've always said that the Washington Commanders really were a run-first team last season, and I think that that's something that they need to lean into more this upcoming season, even with the passing attack that they're going to have, because I really feel like that when the Washington Commanders came in and established the running identity like that, I think that it really physically starts to wear down the football team that you're going against, especially when it comes down to the fourth quarter, because I just think that when you start with the running game and then you start to go over the top like that, it just really, I think, physically and psychologically can wear down a football team. And so hopefully the Washington Commanders continue on with running the football first there and then rely on the passing game next. But second, not to get away here from Zach Ertz, but talking about this defensive adjusted yards above replacement stat here. And so it says that Ertz ranked 10th amongst tight ends there. And so with that metric, what that means essentially is this, and just going by the definition here, if you're not familiar with that, it's a statistic that attempts to measure players' overall value by comparing their performance to a replacement level player in the same position. It essentially translates a player's performance into yards, providing a season-long view of their contribution, similar to RBI totals in baseball here. And so you get a chance to just see what the impact here was for Zach Ertz. You see that he ranked 10th there amongst tight ends here as far as that metric. And so, look, I loved everything that we saw from Zach Ertz this last season. I think that he's poised to have another good season. And then when you look at it in comparison to what we got from Zach Ertz, I think back when Ron Rivera was a head coach, I think that one of the more popular tight ends and really productive tight ends that we had during that time was Logan Thomas. And so when you look at just Logan Thomas and just going back and looking at the numbers here, look, Logan Thomas, when he was with us, his best season, 670 yards. And then he also had 6 touchdowns. And so, going back to Zach Ertz and his productivity and just talking about how well he did, I mean, you could see 654 yards and 7 touchdowns here. And so that just lets you know the type of production that we got from Zach Ertz in year one. And I can only imagine that that's going to get better here in year 2, because not only does he have more of a connection here with Jayden Daniels going into year 2, but the offense has gotten better collectively around Zach Ertz. And I think that, look, a lot of people are probably not going to have Zach Ertz, circled as the person that can hurt you in this offense, but I absolutely think he's going to have a lot of room there. I think he's going to take a lot of advantage of some coverages and things like that because everybody's going to be so focused on what Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel are going to do. You have brought in Jaylen Lane, who I think is really going to have a huge impact on this team early on. And I think that Zach Ertz, you throw him right in the mix here, he is going to get lost in some coverage situations. And I think he's going to make a lot of things happen here for us this upcoming season. And so, it's interesting that he's listed as an underrated player. I think he's certainly going to be an underrated player next season, but he's going to be an underrated player that's going to help us get to the Super Bowl. I'm just throwing that out there. And so we'll see what happens. And so next, I want to talk about the second player that is listed as an underrated player here. And they talk about Quan Martin. And so this article was actually on NFL.com here. And this was a list of just every team and having players that were really underrated here or underappreciated there, which is underrated, the same thing here. So talking about Quan Martin and really what was written here was just talking about how he stuffed the stat sheet. I mean, he went out there, he had 87 tackles, he had 3 forced fumbles, he had 3 passes defended, he had 1 interception. And I guess he did this on 2 separated shoulders here. And so just jokingly here in the article, just talking about they appreciated here his pain tolerance level. And so, look, I think that Quan Martin was terrific last season. And I think that when you look at just what he was able to do, from a productivity standpoint, I think he really stepped it up, from the 2023 season. He had 46 total tackles. He had 28 solos. He had a sack. He had 2 INTs in that season there. And then coming back in 2024 with the 87 total tackles, the 50 solos, and then the 3 forced fumbles, which was huge for us, and the 1 INT. And so I just love the fact that with Quan Martin, you're getting a guy that generates turnovers. And I think that if he can continue to be that type of player, like he is going to be great for us. And I think that it's really going to help us now that Will Harris has been brought in, because I just think that now when you bring a guy like Will Harris in, and then you have Quan Martin, who had a great season last season, first of all, the competition level is going to be high, which is what the Washington Commanders want. And I just think that, now with Coach Witt Jr., he's going to be able to just have so much versatility on the defense. I mean, it's great to have it on the offensive end, because I think that you give a defense fits because you have different packages and they're trying to figure things out there. I think defensively now, I think offenses that are going against us, they're going to also be playing more of a guessing game, because now you can throw Will Harris out there and he can come down in the box. I mean, you can get creative out there. Maybe you have both of them on the field at the same time. Like, I just love the fact that you bring in Will Harris, you have Quan Martin, who was really a great guy as far as just getting turnovers and things like that. So maybe he can focus a little bit more on that as far as getting those takeaways. And so I just cannot wait to see that for Quan Martin next season. And so I think, look, between Zach Ertz and then also to Quan Martin, these guys are going to benefit the most, man, because the defense has gotten better with what we brought in. The offense has gotten better from what we brought in. So between Quan Martin and Zach Ertz, I love it that they're coming in underrated, because I promise you this next season, these guys are ready and poised to have a good season. So anyway, you guys let me know in the comments here what you guys are thinking. Do you feel like that, yes, Zach Ertz was certainly an underrated player last season? Do you feel like he's poised to take another step forward this year with all the offensive weapons out there for the Washington Commanders? And next, what do you think about Quan Martin? Do you think that Quan Martin is going to step it up? Do you agree with me in the facts that, or in the sense, I should say, that now that the Washington Commanders do have Will Harris over here, it's going to give this defense some more versatility and really allow for players to maybe even take a step forward like a Quan Martin this season. And so I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. And as we always say, look, go Commanders, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.